Okay, good morning. So I'm doing my country profile presentation, and I chose to do mine on Iceland, the land of ice and fire for Game of Thrones. So I guess I chose it because I've personally been there. It's one of my favorite European countries. Um, Lots of nature, lots of wide open space. So most actually all the pictures on my sides are from my trip there. Um, this is actually on the southern coast. It was featured in one of the Game of Thrones episodes. This rock formation as the north wall on the edge that's breached. So yeah, so I guess I'll begin. I'm going to start slide by slide. Okay, so I'm going to first start with the physical geography of Iceland. Um, a lot of the geography there has the physical geography has been changed and manipulated by us. So about 11,000 years ago, I'd say about 40% of the landmass, which is about 40,000 square miles, did have trees. Currently, it is much significantly reduced since then, maybe 1%. And that's actually led to a lot of different changes in the climate and the weather that they have there. So this picture on this slide is actually um, from a place called Silfra. It's where the two continents meet from North America and Europe. It's called Silfra. Um, this from this space actually, this is where it causes the island to essentially grow, um, especially with climate change and the increased rate at which land is produced out of this crack. Um, I guess this is what grows a country that with along with volcanoes. So you can actually go there. You can dive in this crack. It's filled with crystal clear blue water. It's gorgeous, actually. Iceland is the 18th largest island in the world. Pretty big, but also it's very small population wise due to the dramatic land features. Like I said, it's highly volcanically active. They actually use that to their advantage, though, which I will cover later in how they produce most of their energy. You would think, being in the Arctic Circle and being given the name Iceland, that it's super cold, when in fact it's not. It's actually on the receiving end of the Gulf Stream, so all that warm water that travels from like the Gulf of Mexico up along the east coast of the U.S. actually gets funneled right at Iceland, and it actually produces a pretty temperate, mild but muggy climate. Um, Low temperatures are probably typical for Iceland, are typically similar to that of New York City, about 32 degrees in the winter, and summers can be quite warm and lots of sunshine because of where it's located on the planet. Um, like I said, like the landscape has been pretty transformed by humans, and with the removal of trees, you can imagine, and being in the middle of the ocean, it gets quite windy there. So windy, and it can happen so dramatically that you have to check the weather before driving, because of all the sand and the wind and the uh, not many things to be blocked by the wind from. It essentially turns the weather into a major sandblaster. So when you get there, when you rent a car, you have to get special insurance, saying and like sign a waiver saying I won't drive in the sand, because oftentimes tourists will do this, get stuck, and the car will be sandblasted for hours, ripping the paint off. So if you didn't know that, be careful when you drive in Iceland on their one road, pretty much. Okay. Next, I'm going to go over a human geography of Iceland. But first, I'll talk about this picture. This is probably one of the most iconic spots in Iceland. It's Kirkjufell, Kirkjufellafoss. Famous mountain. A lot of people take pictures of the northern lights there. Super cool place. Very beautiful. So yeah. Also, I guess we're talking about the population. So believe it or not, Iceland, even though it's the 18th largest island in the world, has the lowest population in Europe, which is surprising because there's some pretty small countries in Europe. Like I said on the previous slide, it's about 40,000, or excuse me, it's about it has about 400,000 people um, currently residing in the island, most within the cities. It's kind of hard to live outside the cities due to the extreme weather. Let's see. One of the several of the main exports that they survive on are fish, as you can imagine, because they're surrounded by the ocean, and aluminum. Aluminum being pretty important to their economy, with most, if not all, of their exports going to the U.S., which is, for me, when I read about this, surprising, because you would think, they're part of the EU, a lot of them go to Europe, but nope. U.S. being the massive um, importer that it is, takes most of their resources. But the largest factor besides fish and aluminum is going to be tourism, which we'll talk about in a second. Okay, we go over socioeconomic challenges in Iceland. This is again just a video of the continental divide, or sorry, a picture of the continental divide. You can walk through it. It's pretty cool little spot. But yeah, so statistically, Iceland is the safest place in the entire world. And it has been that way for about 13 years now. Crime is extremely low, if it barely exists, and most of it, if any does happen, is from tourism and the tourists. Very polite, quiet, humble people there. Super nice, welcoming. At least I thought so. Don't try the fermented shark soup. Let's see. Most of the country's populace is stems from first generation, Icelandic immigrants. When they first came back, they're back in the Viking days, and it remains that way today. Most of them, there's very small minority groups, some like Lithuanian and scattered other, but for the most part, it's purely Icelandic in culture. Like I said, we're going to talk about tourism. Tourism is the major economic driver. It makes about 42% of the economy, which is pretty huge. So you can imagine they probably had a rough time the past year and a half or so with COVID. They are officially back open. So I think as of April, they opened the doors back up to people that are vaccinated to travel to your heart's content. So if you can, go support Iceland and check it out. It's a cool place. Probably one of my favorite European countries. And the last thing I'm just going to talk about the GDP. It's pretty solid. If you live in Iceland, you're doing pretty well. Like majority of the people, 66,000 comparatively to the U.S. dollar is their GDP per year. Okay, climate change. Climate change is a big to do in Iceland. They're in the Arctic Circle, so they're gonna, countries like that exist in those latitudes are gonna be, they're gonna be witness to more significant, obvious changes in the climate, and Iceland is privy to that. Currently, Iceland loses about 35 square miles of glacier per year, being that I think at least 10% of Iceland's landmass is made up of glaciers. That's a pretty significant loss on a yearly basis. Over the last, I think 20 years, it's added up to about 750 square kilometers of glacier land. So that's pretty significant. Not only does it affect the glaciers, I mean, obviously you're going to have significant algae blooms produced from the massive amounts of silicate and fresh water released from these glaciers melting in the oceans. It's going to have impact on the seasonal fishery production rates. Currently, I mean, they still manage it with what's it called, how much you can catch per year, and they're doing well, but there will be a point where they'll have to reevaluate that. Also, a reduction in glaciers is going to increase volcanic activity. Iceland is probably one of the most active volcanic areas, one of the most active volcanic areas in the world. I'm sure you've seen the movies about, Katla and all the mega super volcanoes that exist there that are buried under these glaciers. So we start melting them away. It's definitely going to change how active they are and how often they are active. I think there's a movie that just came out on Netflix called Katla, which is about Iceland and that volcano. Um, okay, next I think is green energy. Okay, so we're talking about Iceland's green energy. Iceland is super cool in this aspect. They have really, really led the way, you know, on how to use your country's resources and turn them into, renewable energy. Oh, excuse me, I sneeze. So they are one of three countries in the world that produce 100% of their energy from renewable resources. I think Albania is another one, and Paraguay is the other one. Both of those produce 100% of theirs off of hydroelectric um, energy, but Iceland is split. So they got about 72% hydroelectric and 28% geothermal. In this picture, actually, this is the Blue Lagoon. It's probably one of Iceland's more like iconic and famous tourist destinations. This Blue Lagoon is actually an outflow from one of their geothermal power stations. So the heat that is, and water that is discharged from that facility essentially makes this Blue Lagoon possible. Beautiful blue water, as you can see in the picture. I was there. It's pretty crazy experience. Expensive, but 100% worth it. I would say. Got out of there feeling like Jello. Super cool experience. Not only that, like I said, it's used. I think the geothermal power station is used for produce electricity for the majority of their capital, which is Reykjavik, which isn't too far from there. So yeah, let's go to the next slide. Okay, I think that's it. Here's my reference list. This is what the majority of Iceland's roads looks like. It's a big loop around the country to each city. You can go, miles and miles, drive hours and hours and not see a human or anything, related to human structure. It's a very vast landscape, and I know my stuff's over, but I just like to say that it's a magical place. Like it's surreal, and you can really see why the early settlers like Vikings and stuff, when you're there, viewed it as like the land of the gods, because it just looks like a dragon's gonna pop out behind every mountain, or Thor is gonna shoot a lightning bolt out of the sky. It's a humbling place, and it is gorgeous, and that essentially does happen, because I went there to go see the Northern Lights, and probably one of the coolest experiences that I have ever been fortunate enough to see. So that's my presentation on the beautiful and amazing country and safe country of Iceland. Thanks for watching. It's been a great semester. This was probably my favorite part of the course, because I get to talk about cool places like this. Thank you, Professor, for your guidance throughout. I learned a lot, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your summer.